Anybody else have one of these machines? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Mention how much it costs.
Yeah, I think new these are over $1,000. I got this off of Craigslist for around half price, and he had bought all the attachments, which kind of the heart of this thing are these templates that you use for doing the mortise and the tenon. You go around the outer edge for the tenon, and then there's a slot in the middle that you go back and forth in to cut your mortise. They're plastic. They are plastic. On the tabletop, you've got the, where you fit your template in. There's another slot on the right-hand side where a guide pin on the router base slides back and forth. It's tapered. The template is tapered, so you've got adjustment that you can make to tighten or loosen the joints up on this thing. The tabletop has stops on it, so once you make your initial adjustment for the tenon, you can lock the table in so that it won't move front to back. When you go to do your mortises, it'll just slide left and right. There's a little aiming window here in the middle, which is how you sight in for your mortises and tenons. Put a crosshair on your work pieces, and then you sight it into a little window in here. And again, once it's sighted in for the tenons, on the mortise, all you've got to worry about is left and right. And lever on the right side unlocks, and then the table moves front to back, left to right, in order to sight it in. There's a clamping guide on the front that's set up for 90 degrees. You can move that to any angle you want. Also, the clamping table pivots up so you can do compound mortise and tenons, which I hope to never do.
Can you tell us a moment about who makes that thing and what model?
Well, that's the Leigh FMT Pro. That stands for frame, mortise, and tenon. Frames like doing this joint. This is the joint I'm going to demo today. Is just a simple.
That's a true
90-degree mortise and tenon like for a frame. Yeah, you can do double mortise and tenons where they're double side by side on wider stock, or doubles lengthwise. You can also do longer mortise and tenons by using the stops, the left and right stops on the top of the table to have it repeatable. You can use it for bridle joints. You know what a bridle joint is? Where you cut a slot in one piece and then basically fits in the end. But it'll do bridle joints as well, haunch joints. Yeah, and doubles I hope never to do. On the router plate, here's the two pins. They're going to ride in those guides. And again, they are adjustable with these knobs up and down, thousandth of an inch, to tighten up or loosen up joints as needed. The setup I've got is, that I'm going to show today, is the easiest one. It's a single router bit and a single template. In the book, they've got, 100 different combinations you can do with different bits, different templates. But I'm using a single bit, single template to do the demo today, which is a 3/8 inch bit for the mortise. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in the machine. Basically, you extend the sight out and you bring that up just a touch of the sight. So I brought it up, touching the sight up against the 90-degree stop. That's good. Clamp it down. Good and tight. You retract the sight. They have built this thing so if you forget to bring the sight back, the router base plate will actually push it back for you. So there's pretty much no chance that you're going to eat it up with the router bit. So I'm putting the left or the right pin in that slot, and the left pin will go on the outside of the template. There's rough. Yeah, I've got some glasses in ears. Yep, go ahead. For the first cut, I'm going to go clockwise around this to make a light cut, to make you a cleaner shoulder on the workpiece, and then I'll finish it up going counterclockwise the way you're supposed to go on this. Locking it down in the plunge. I've already set this up at home for this piece. Now we'll take a look, make sure that we got it, all the material removed. Yep. Let's see. Do the mortise. And I just need a single line for the mortise to sight that in. I'm really not going to worry too much about that today.
Is that a center line?
It's a center line. And I don't have crosshairs because, again, the table, if I were to go ahead and move the table, it's already locked in front to back, so there's no need for both crosshair.
How thick and how wide a board can you handle?
Okay, so now for this cut, I'm going to use that center slot in the template. There is a little bit of wiggle room in there, so I got to make sure when I kind of finish this thing up that I push against those sides. But I'm going to do overlapping plunge cuts to do this, and then bring it back and forth, clean it out. Need to also change my depth just a little bit so that the mortise is just a little bit deeper.
Excellent point, you need to emphasize that.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. You'd always cut them off. After you get it out, they put too much glue.
Yeah, so they recommend either overlapping plunges or plunge to a shallow level, go across, plunge deeper, go across. But the one they really recommend is the overlapping. Because if your router has run out and different things in it, you could end up with a stepped surface inside.
Now, the setup time you did before you came here was not much? Or
It's not much.
it's just
No, yeah, I made them, not thinking about, oh, I bought a used machine. So in the manual where it said factory set to 90 degrees, well, guess what? Really, the only thing I had to adjust was the clamping table
Yeah.
was not set at 90 degrees. So the first few I did, it was like, oh, look, that's a great joint. And I look on the other side, oh yeah, that's a nice gap. It was coming down at an angle. So I probably did 3, maybe 4 test cuts at home, getting things lined up.
Sure looks nice, though.
That's it, yeah.
Want to pass that around?
Yep.
That's all you've done with it so far?
That's all I've done. I've not made a project, but I've got a couple of projects coming up, which is why I originally bought it. I go looking for stuff in anticipation of.
This is 500 to start with. Overhead.
Yeah. Well, I'll make the first one for my mother-in-law and tell my wife that's worth $1,000, and then I'm $500 ahead on the deal. So.
I understand the principle of that thing, right? You don't need bushings with that plate, right?
No, there's no bushings. I mean, when you set your router up on it, there are there's some little guides that you put in to make sure you get it centered to the hole in the hole in the bottom plate. Except bushing, you put that in your router and it fits in the hole and make sure you got everything lined up just right. Yeah, but otherwise, all there are those templates, and I got a whole box of them, different sizes. So it's part of it.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the next one. You've got 3 to do here. This is definitely the poor man's version of making a mortise, but it works beautifully if you do a little prep work ahead of time. For one thing, with any kind of mortise and tenon, you want to make sure your stock is square all 4 sides and it's consistent, because you're going to kill yourself trying to fight inconsistent wood. So even if you buy wood from Swanee Lumber or somewhere like that, you want to make a real light pass through a planer or something, so they're all exactly the same size before you start. What I did basically to set this up, this is just a piece of clear plastic. It doesn't have to be clear. It can be anything you want, but I thought it did when I first made it. I need to be able to see what's going on, but you don't need to be clear. This is dumpster diving stuff from work. A couple of slots cut in it so that you can move the guides in and out on the plastic. Adjustment screws so that it's easily to adjust. It needs to be fairly wide, because what you're trying to do is make your base wide enough so that your router doesn't tip so easy. So this needs to be fairly wide and fairly long so it has a nice steady base. And to set your wood up, all this does, I won't do the ends of the boards because we don't have time, but if you're doing the ends of the board, you put several pieces of board together, and what you would do is the inside and the outside board, and the other pieces just gives you a flat surface to work with. So in this case, I have the one I did last night, just make sure it's working good and everything. I have in the middle. We're not going to be cutting that. We're cutting the inside and the outside. And I'll cut with the router orientation one way for the one on the inside, and turn the router around, come around for the outside cut. So if I don't dead center my center line mark, if I do it that way, it's going to be consistent, and I'll mark an X on the outside of the boards so I'll know the orientation, so that if it's off ever so slightly, it won't matter. Also on my tenons, I have a really difficult time getting them perfectly flat. So a lot of times when I'm doing furniture and stuff like that, I won't even attempt to do that. I'll actually make my tenon slightly inside so I have a slight reveal on the other part, and I may round over that outside part with a 1/16 round over or something like that. It makes for a nice fit. And also, if my tenon is not absolutely perfect and there's a tiny, tiny gap or something, your eye's not going to go to it. So that's a way to kind of get around trying to match it perfect. with that machine and with a domino, you can get it perfectly flat. But I can't do that with this method that well. I've tried it. It's just not as easy to do. But the way that the essential how this works is you just take a draw a center line, put your piece up there, adjust one side to line up with that center line, and then bring the other side so that it's kind of snug, so that it slides back and forth. All right, that's it, friends. Let's do it this way first. Do it outside, the camera can see it better. All right. So once I do that, then I draw reference lines showing the length of the tenon. It's going to be I'm going to use loose tenons, and I'll plane them to the 3/8 thickness or 3/8 widths that I have, and use a 3/8 roundover bit to round the edges over so it fits in that rounded corner. Now you can take your time and do it the old standard way and chip those corners out like that, brought in, and you can do it like that, but I don't want to mess with all that, especially with small ones. There's no gain from it. So the way this works, basically, get my router plugged. Once I get my jig set up, I got my lines drawn. In my case, I just transfer the lines from the one from last night. I'll start on one side. These guides on the back are about 1/8 of an inch difference. Like he was talking about earlier, you can go thicker with that bit. But if you take it in small increments and take your time, you won't burn that bit. Those bits are solid carbide. They're a little bit expensive. So I'll set it up there. It's going to be difficult to see. After the class, I'll be glad to show you guys again how this works.
Why you want to use an up spiral?
It clears the chips out with a nut bit. A little more expensive, but makes a big difference. You can use a straight bit; it will work, but you kind of need an air hose handy to kind of keep it blowing out. Air hose is handy around this anyway. It makes a bit of a mess. I start it. I'll go down to the first slot. I start at my line, push it slightly, go to the line. All I'm doing is changing that guide to the next slot down. Final cut. On this cut, you want to make sure you get it all the way to the end of the line so you have a nice clean edge all the way down. That's basically it. So really the work of this is set the jig up. But once you set the jig up one time, it's versatile. You can use it for any of your projects. And the ends of the board are done the same way. I just use loose tenons most of the time, but I am going to show you how to cut a tenon on the table saw. But that's basically it. On the ends of the boards, to do the boards, you have a little more trouble getting a flat area. But what you want to do is set it up so you'll readjust this. You'll adjust one side or the other to get it to the center of the inside and outside board, and then flip the router around and do the other side so that your orientation is right on both ways. As long as you keep the X's matching each other, you'll be in good shape. That's basically how I cut my tenons. It's fairly fast once you get set up and going. Anyway, all right. Our mortise is ready. All right, on the tenons, the easiest way to do those, I don't use the tenons a lot. I use loose tenons most of the time, but it's easy to set it up. You want to set your shoulder cut up first. All right, so a 3/8 tenon is 325 thousandths, and a 3/4 is 750 thousandths. So you take 325 from 750 divided by 2, and that would be the height of your blade for the shoulder cut. But I actually like to kind of back off about 2 or 3 thousandths. The nice thing about these digital things, you can do that. That way I make it a little bit tighter, and then I can sand it to fit tight. With this type mortise, you want a pretty snug fit. The same thing with those. You want it loose enough so you don't fight it trying to get it together, but tight enough that it makes really good glue contact. All right, and then once you set the height up, I might want to do a whole lot with this. I want to leave time for Todd here. So let's do it. I happen to have one from last night. These boards aren't 3/4, they're 4 than that. So I'm going to come up to the height approximately. And you don't ever want to use this against your fence with a miter gauge like that, because it can grab it and kick it against you and everything. So what you want to do is start back here with your distance. So I would move this right here to get my length of my shoulder. I've already done that. But you want to back that off so that you're not against the blade. All we want to do is make sure this board is against our guide. Slide it forward. And then the top and bottom too as well. All right. Now this shoulder, generally speaking, is usually a little bit longer than side cuts, because you want as much of that to give it strength for racking. But I just want the cut to be on the face perfect. But I'm going to cut that off with a bandsaw when I get through. I probably won't do it today, but anyway, once you get this done, there's another jig you can use. And it's fairly fast to set up. Okay. Since I have one, and for the sake of speeding up the class, I'm going to put it in there. What you're doing, basically, one thing you want to make darn sure for safety thing on this is don't do this. Because this has to be tight. The last kickback I got, and the first one since I was probably a teenager, came from this. So, came from what happened is I made this real short. I was using a setup piece. It's the right thickness, but it was very short. It had enough room for it to go all the way up underneath there. Made a nice little imprint on my belly right there. But anyway, so while you're doing this, make sure you tighten it good and tight. All right, what we're going to do, we're going to have to back off. This screw right here will move the whole jig left and right. This one tightens against the screw, this one tightens the jig itself. You see it moving? So what we want to do is line it up with the edge of that saw blade. All right. You want to come up with the saw blade over at the shoulder, or thereabout. This fits best piece, so we'll just show it real quick. So that's really all there is to setting it up. Now you'll have to adjust it. You'll need a few boards that are exactly the thickness of what you're going to use to get this real nice and tight. And then it's just a matter. I'm not going to strip anything, right? It's clean. that makes a nice shape. Now we're going to check this against your mortises. And I'm a little loose, so I would adjust it a little bit to make it tighter. That's basically the concept. And then this, I can just take bandsaw. As long as I've got that clean shoulder right there, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect on the other part, so I can just take the bandsaw. We don't have to do it. We just cut it off a little bit, cut it off a little bit to make my shoulder a little bit longer. That's basically all you do. But once you have that jig, it's fairly fast to set it up. Once you set it up for tightness, as long as you spend time and effort to get this stock exactly the same thickness all the way throughout, it's fast once you get set up. That's basically all I got. Ready?